Welcome to Scary Plugin, the place where your deepest fears come alive, where shadows whisper secrets and the night hides more than it reveals. Before we dive into tonight's terrifying stories, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that will keep you awake long after the lights go out. Are you ready to face what lurks in the dark? I used to work at a theme park. I won't say which one, because honestly, I still don't have answers for what I experienced there. I'd never been a firm believer in ghosts before. But after that night, I can't shake what I saw. It was a few weeks ago, late at night, during the park's Halloween event. We were shutting down the scare mazes, locking them up, checking to make sure everyone was out. Two of these mazes were built inside a really old building. One of them was in the basement. The other was at the very top floor. We started in the basement first, just the usual walkthrough, making sure nobody was still inside. There's this one section of the maze where you have to walk through rows of shelves filled with jars, creepy enough on its own. But the actors working inside the maze also use what are called rat runs, hidden passages, shortcuts built into the design, so they can appear out of nowhere and get a better scare. I went into one of these rat runs, just routine. That's when I heard something, a voice. I thought maybe an actor had gotten left behind or someone had wandered in. So I went to check, and that's when I saw him, a little boy, standing right there among the shelves. But he didn't look like some kid who'd snuck into the maze. He was wearing old medieval-style clothes, strange, outdated. I froze. Then I asked him if he was okay. He didn't answer. He just turned and ran off into the shadows. I chased after him, but there was nothing. No sound of footsteps, no movement, just silence. And here's the thing, he didn't look like a ghost. Not pale, not see-through. He looked real, just an ordinary little boy. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the darkness was playing tricks on me. I shook it off and we finished locking down the basement maze. But the next part, that's what I can't explain. We went upstairs to shut down the second maze. Now this maze was huge, about a 15-minute walk from start to finish. And since it was on the top floor of the building, there weren't any hidden rooms. No rat runs, no extra space to move through. If you went beyond the walls, you'd literally fall out of the building. So we started walking through, and then everything went dark. Not the lights shutting off, not the kind of dark you get in a blackout. This was different. It was like I had been pulled into another place entirely. Suddenly I was standing in a pitch-black room, silent, empty. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. It was just perfect, balanced, as if all my senses were dulled down to nothing. I thought maybe I had walked into another rat run. So I took a few steps forward. That's when I saw it, a line of light, thin like a crack in the wall. I moved toward it, 3, maybe 4 steps, and then I stepped through. And just like that, I was back in the maze, only I wasn't where I had been before. I had come out right next to the dollhouse, and that's at the very end of the maze. I stood there completely confused. I turned back, expecting to see the gap I had just stepped through. But it was gone. Just a solid wall. No door, no crack, nothing. 10 minutes later, my group finally came around the corner. They asked me where I'd been. When I told them, they didn't believe me. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. That maze takes at least 15 minutes to walk through. I had just entered it, but somehow in the span of 3 steps, I ended up on the other side. That's physically impossible, and yet it happened. I don't know if I slipped into some kind of alternate space, if I was hallucinating, or if something supernatural was at work that night. But the memory of that boy in the basement, the look of him, the way he ran off before disappearing, it makes me wonder, what if it wasn't just a maze? What if that building is a doorway to something else? Bridge to next story. That was just the beginning. Because if strange figures in abandoned theme parks unsettle you, just wait until you hear about the little girl who walks the halls of a family's home long after midnight. This next one still makes my skin crawl every time I think about it, because unlike the maze story, this didn't happen at a theme park. It happened inside someone's own home, a place that should feel safe, warm, familiar. But for one family, it became a place where something else lived. Something that looked like a little girl, but wasn't. It started small. A voice in the hallway late at night. Light footsteps like a child running across the floor. Doors creaking open when no one touched them. At first, it was easy to dismiss. The house was old, and old houses make noises. The family laughed it off, blaming the wind, the pipes, the creaks, and the floorboards. But then, the daughter of the family came running to her mother one night. She said there was another little girl standing in her bedroom. She wasn't crying. She wasn't laughing. She just stood there in the corner, watching. When her mom went to check, the room was empty. No one there. They tried to calm her down. Told her it was a dream, maybe a trick of the shadows. But the next night, it happened again. And this time, the mother saw it too. She was walking down the hallway, half asleep, when she caught sight of a figure slipping into her daughter's room. A small figure, a child. Her first thought was that it was her own daughter, maybe getting up for a glass of water, maybe restless from a bad dream. But when she pushed open the door, she saw her daughter fast asleep in bed. And standing next to the bed was the other girl. She looked about 7 years old. Dark hair, pale skin, wearing an old-fashioned white dress that brushed the floor. Her head tilted slightly as if she were studying them. And her eyes were too dark, too wide. The mother froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked. And just like that, the girl was gone. No sound of footsteps. No door closing, nothing. From that night on, things escalated. The air in the house grew heavy. The kind of pressure that settles in your chest, making it hard to breathe. The family started hearing tapping. 2 quick knocks on the wall. Sometimes 3. Always at night. Always near the bedrooms. The daughter said she would hear whispering right behind her ear when she was alone. But when she turned, no one was there. Even the dog began acting strangely, sitting in the hallway, ears perked, growling at the empty doorway. One night, the mother's best friend, let's call her Faith, was over, helping clean up the kitchen. The father was at work and the kids were already in bed. The narrator had just gone to the bathroom to shave when something unsettling happened. He saw what looked like Faith walk in behind him. He turned to ask her a question, but she wasn't there. He called out. Faith answered back. From the bedroom. She hadn't been anywhere near the bathroom. So who or what had just walked in behind him? That same night, they heard the air mattress moving in the living room. 3 times. The sound of someone shifting on it, as if sitting down. The dog perked up immediately, ears forward, growling. Faith and the narrator stared at the mattress. It kept moving, but no one was there. Then came the voices. Faith said she heard a dog barking outside the window, but the sound warped, bending into something else. The bark turned into human crying. The sound was faint at first, but grew louder, sobbing, weeping, and then silence. The family tried to ignore it, tried to live as though it wasn't happening, but the house wouldn't let them. The cats began acting strange. One would meow in the kitchen while clearly sitting on the bookshelf in the living room. Another would appear in the hallway, only to vanish when they turned the corner. They would hear scratching at the door late at night, growls outside the window, and always, that little girl. Sometimes they would see her directly. Sometimes only as a reflection in a darkened TV screen or a mirror. But she was always there, watching. One night, Faith was lying in the bedroom, trying to sleep. when she heard the sound again. Tap, 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 coming from the bathroom. Not just once, over and over, like someone trying to get her attention. She refused to look, too afraid she'd see a face staring back through the crack of the sliding door. Later that night, the narrator heard the same tapping from behind his husband's computer, and again from the kitchen. It was everywhere. The breaking point came when he thought he saw his cat, Salem, sitting in the chair in the living room. But when he turned his head, the chair was empty. Then he thought he saw Nebby, the other cat, crawling toward him across the floor. But Nebby was nowhere to be found. Over and over, he saw things that weren't there, until finally he had to ask himself, was this the little girl? Was she using their pets, their own eyes, their own thoughts, to trick them, or worse? Was she trying to make them lose their grip on reality? The house hasn't been the same since. And when you live with something like that, night after night, you don't just wonder if it's a ghost. You start to wonder if it's waiting for you to notice it, if it's waiting for the right moment to show you what it really is. Because sometimes, the things we think are children aren't children at all. Bridge to next story. If that wasn't unsettling enough, the next encounter takes us outside the home, into a quiet park on a rainy night, where a group of friends saw something walking across the soccer field. Something that never broke its pace. Something that may still be following. I don't know why this memory still claws at me. It's been years, but every time I replay it in my mind, the unease sinks deeper. Because I know what I saw that night, and I still don't know if it was human. It was raining hard that night. Not just a drizzle, but a steady, pounding rain that blurred the streets and drowned the air in white noise. My friends and I had plans, nothing unusual. Just teenagers meeting up at the park to hang out, to smoke a little, to pass the time. They were riding together in one car. I was driving alone, planning to meet them in the parking lot. Now, let me explain this lot, because it matters. It wasn't a regular square or open lot. It was long, narrow, with a soccer field stretched out on each side of it, parallel. Strips of grass that ran beside the lot like the lanes of a bowling alley. And at the far end of all that was the forest, thick, dark, and endless. I parked my car dead center under the only working streetlight. The rain was coming down so hard it shimmered in the yellow glow, like a curtain of needles. I sat there for a few minutes, engine running, windshield wipers dragging back and forth, waiting. When my friends finally pulled in, I climbed out, slammed the door against the rain, and jumped into their car. We started to pull away, and that's when we saw it. At first I thought it was just someone walking, a lone figure in the rain. But the way they moved, steady, methodical, never breaking pace, it froze me. They were cutting across the soccer field, at a perfect diagonal. Not toward us, not away, just a straight, unbroken line. Like a chess piece, like a bishop gliding across a board. No hesitation, no glance around. No reaction to the storm. I remember whispering, "Do you see that?" My friends fell quiet. One of them muttered, "What the hell?" We slowed the car. The figure drew closer, their angle cutting them directly toward the spot where my car was parked. And here's the thing. They didn't drift, didn't stumble, didn't change pace. Not once. Their steps were so precise it was like they were following a line only they could see. Diagonal, straight across the field. The rain hit the windshield like static. My chest tightened. This wasn't normal. No one walks like that. Not in heavy rain. Not across an empty soccer field in the dead of night. And yet, they kept coming. Within moments, they were only a few feet from my car. If they had taken one more step forward, they would have slammed straight into it. But they didn't. Without a pause, without a second's hesitation, they turned. Sharp, precise, mechanical. They walked around the back of the car, then along the driver's side, then across the front. Their pace never broke. Their posture never shifted. And then, at the far corner of my car, they turned again and walked back onto that exact same diagonal line, heading straight for the woods. I swear, I couldn't breathe. The rain pounded harder, masking the sound of their footsteps. The figure didn't look back, didn't acknowledge us, just kept moving. Steady, relentless, unnatural. We just sat there, watching, until the darkness of the forest swallowed them whole. I remember whispering, "What the hell was that?" One of my friends muttered something I'll never forget. They said it felt like it wasn't walking to us. It was walking through us, like we weren't even there. And they were right. It was like this thing wasn't just wandering around randomly. It was on its way to something, somewhere, and we had just accidentally seen it in transit. The whole car sat in silence for a long moment, the rain drumming on the roof. Finally, I told them to pull over. I wanted to move my car. I didn't feel safe leaving it there under that lonely streetlight. So we doubled back. I climbed out into the rain, slid into my own car, and drove to meet them at the Walmart parking lot instead. Someplace busy, someplace lit, someplace alive. Because whatever that was, I wasn't leaving my car behind for it. To this day, I can still picture the way it walked. That steady pace, that diagonal line, those sharp, perfect turns. Not once did it break rhythm. Not once did it act human. And sometimes late at night, when I'm driving home alone and I catch a shadow cutting across the street, I can't help but wonder, what if it wasn't random? What if it really was like that movie It Follows, and we just happened to see it on its way to someone? And what if one night it comes back, and this time, I'm the one it's walking toward? Bridge to next story. That was outside, in the open. But the next story drags us back into the dark history of family, curses and rituals, where bloodlines don't just carry DNA, but something much darker, something that never dies. Not every haunting begins with a house. Some begin with blood, with family, with pain so deep it carves a permanent scar on generations that follow. This story is mine, but before it was mine, it was my mother's. And before hers, it was my grandmother's. My grandmother's name was Kathy. And if I'm being honest with you, she wasn't exactly Mother of the Year material. She was the kind of woman people describe with lowered voices and uncomfortable glances. The kind of woman who left damage everywhere she went. Kathy had 2 daughters, one she adored and one she despised. The one she hated was my mother, Nancy. Now, Nancy wasn't born from love. She was born from betrayal. Kathy's husband was serving overseas when she had an affair. When he came home and did the math, he left her behind, left her with 2 little girls, one that carried his blood and one that didn't. Nancy was the reminder, the living, breathing symbol of infidelity, and Kathy never forgave her for it. From the time my mother was a baby, she was treated as less, as unwanted. And that's where the paranormal side begins. Because according to my mother, and confirmed by others who witnessed it, Kathy considered herself a white witch. One night, when Nancy was still just an infant, Kathy laid her in the middle of a ritual circle. Candles, red and black, burned around her. Symbols had been drawn onto the floor, and Kathy chanted, summoning something, inviting something, offering up her own daughter as I don't even know what. A vessel, a sacrifice? A friend of Kathy's walked in and saw it, and from that day forward it was clear whatever had been called that night never left. Years later, Nancy ran from that darkness, straight into religion. One day she grabbed Mormon missionaries off the street and demanded to be baptized. For her, faith wasn't salvation. It was just another cage, another tool for control. And she carried that brokenness into her own family, into me. When I was born, it felt like that curse, the one that started with Kathy's ritual, was stamped onto my life from day one. I watched my mother fall into abusive relationships. I watched her nearly lose her life, multiple times too. A man who swore he loved her. And through it all, strange things always seemed to happen. Lights flickering, objects moving, shadows in places they shouldn't be. It wasn't constant. It wasn't chaos every day, but it came in waves, almost like it followed emotion. The darker my mother's moods became, the darker the activity grew. But the one thing I will never forget happened when I was 7 years old. I was in my room, standing on my bed, looking out the basement window, just watching the birds. When suddenly they scattered, like something had startled them all at once. And then right beside my ear, I heard it. An evil laugh, not human, not playful, not kind. It was low, mocking, guttural, and my room was empty. That laugh still echoes in my bones to this day. As I got older, I was eventually placed into my grandmother Kathy's custody. And if my mother's abuse was bad, Kathy's was worse. She beat me, starved me, accused me of things I hadn't done, and the paranormal activity grew with her anger. Objects vanished and reappeared. A book flew across the room at me, slamming into the wall. The motion alarm on my door would go off in the dead of night, as if something had passed through, and every time it did, Kathy would punish me for it. She said I was bringing spirits into her home, but deep down, I knew she had brought them long before me. When I was finally removed and placed into foster care, the energy shifted. The house I moved to was quieter, gentler. The activity still happened, but it was softer. A little boy's spirit lingered in the barn. I'd see his handprints on pipes, his small face peeking from windows. He wasn't frightening, just there. I waved to him once, and he waved back. But as I grew older and eventually returned to my mother, I realized something. The curse wasn't gone. It just lay dormant, waiting. The older Nancy became, the more she resembled Kathy. The same venom, the same manipulative darkness. And then the nightmares began. In 2022, I had the worst dream of my life. In it, I found a mirror. Not a normal mirror. It was round, framed in twisted branches, like something woven from the woods. Inside, under the reflective surface, was a fake eye. When I looked into it, the reflection changed. And staring back at me was a demonic eye, blood red, endless, watching. Some stories start with small things. A light flickering, a door opening, a whisper you can't explain. But this one built up for years, like a storm waiting for the right night to finally break. And when it happened, it left me questioning reality itself. I've had paranormal experiences almost my entire life. I've been spooked, sure, but never really terrified. Until that night. You see, strange things weren't new to me. Doors opening and closing on their own. Lights flicking off. Footsteps echoing down the hallway when no one was there. Cabinets slamming. Voices calling from empty rooms. It was part of my normal. But this was different. This was something darker. It happened in early 2023. I was 21. At the time, I lived with my mom and my sister. My room was my safe space. I burned incense every night. Surrounded myself with crystals, with energy that felt protective. I told myself nothing negative could ever get in. And for years, that belief held true, until that night. It started simple enough. I woke up in the middle of the night needing the bathroom. My boyfriend, who was staying over, woke up too. The bathroom was down the hall, glowing faintly from the little nightlight inside. As I stepped into the hall, I saw him. Barkley, our childhood dog, just lying outside the bathroom door. I bent down, petted him, like I always did, then slipped into the bathroom. When I came back out, he was still there. I scratched behind his ear again, whispered his name, and made my way back to my room. I cracked my door just in case he wanted to come curl up with me later. Totally normal, totally harmless, or so I thought. A few minutes later, my door creaked open, and in bounded Luna, my sister's boyfriend's dog. energetic, wild. She leapt onto the bed, smothering us with licks before I shoved her off. She trotted right back out of the room. Strange, because my sister always locked both dogs inside her room at night. But I shrugged it off. Maybe they'd forgotten. I shut the door a little tighter, leaving it cracked just enough for light from the bathroom nightlight to spill in, and I lay back in bed. My boyfriend rested his head on my chest, staring toward my closet. We talked quietly, and then I saw it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, there it was. A figure, tall, black, motionless, standing in the doorway. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It didn't do anything. It just leaned forward, as if peering into my room, watching us. I froze. It wasn't just a shadow. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was shaped like a person, but there were no details, no features, just an outline. Pure black, head tilted slightly, like it was curious, like it was waiting. I told myself it had to be one of the cats casting a strange shadow. I waited for my boyfriend to turn his head. If he saw it too, then I'd know it wasn't just me. Seconds crawled by, and then he turned. His eyes shifted to the door, and the very second he looked, the figure slid back, out of view, gone. I gasped, shoved him off me, shot upright, my back pressed hard against the wall. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I was shaking so badly I thought I might pass out. Hyperventilating. He kept asking what was wrong, panicking, trying to calm me down. And finally I forced out the words. Someone is in the hall. He searched the entire house. No one. Empty. But when I told him how tall the figure had looked, that's when the fear set in. He's 6'4", a giant compared to most people. And when he stood in the doorway, he barely reached the spot where that figure's head had been. That thing would have had to be over 7 feet tall, leaning in, watching us. I tried to calm down. Eventually, exhaustion won. When my sister's boyfriend's alarm went off around 6 in the morning, I called for them, and that's when everything unraveled. Because Luna, the dog that had come into my room hours earlier, came bounding in again, jumping on me, licking me, excited. But when my sister and her boyfriend stepped inside, confused, they swore. Both Luna and Barkley had been in their room the entire night. Door locked. No way out. My blood went cold. I pinched myself over and over, asking if I was dreaming. But I wasn't. My boyfriend remembered everything. He saw the figure too, and to this day I can't explain it. Was it a trick? A hallucination? Some twisted spirit taking the shape of the dogs to lower my guard? Or was it something worse? Something inhuman? Something that could stand 7 feet tall and still lean down through a doorway like it was nothing. Even now, long after I've moved out of that house, I sometimes wake in the middle of the night, and I swear, I see the edge of a figure, leaning in, watching, waiting, bridge to next story. That was the shadow in the hall. But shadows aren't always silent. Sometimes they follow, sometimes they imitate, and sometimes they bring sounds that make your blood run cold. Because our next story isn't about what you see, it's about what you hear. They say once you see something you can't explain, it opens a door. Sometimes that door is just in your head. Sometimes it's in your house. And sometimes it's in you. This next story is about what happens when something gets through. It started with my best friend, Faith. She swore she'd seen it first. A tall, thin black shadow, sprinting past the window of our downstairs apartment. Not a person, not an animal, something else. And after she saw it, things started happening. At first, it was little things, like the air mattress moving when no one was sitting on it, like something unseen shifting its weight, or creeping closer, right next to you. I'd be in the living room and hear it, that soft thump like a body pressing into it. Faith would be in the bathroom and call out, "Did you just sit down?" But no one had. It did it over and over like it wanted us to notice. One evening, Faith was walking from the kitchen to the hallway. She froze. I'll never forget the look on her face. Her eyes were locked on the far end of the hall, where a tall, thin black shadow stood, perfectly still, pressed against the door like it was part of it, watching her. That same morning, we both heard the air mattress again. It moved 3 times. Even our dog Freckles, normally calm, tail wagging, perked up, ears pointed, staring straight at the mattress. She growled low, like she saw something we couldn't. Later that day, I was shaving in the bathroom. Faith had gone to clean the kitchen, or so I thought. I caught movement in the mirror, someone walking in behind me. I turned, expecting to see Faith, but no one was there. I screamed her name, and she walked out of the bedroom holding her phone charger, looking confused. She hadn't been anywhere near me. That's when it started making noises. Faith heard a dog barking outside, but then it changed. The sound warped, shifted, became crying, human crying. Soft at first, then clearer. We got the dogs inside, but my cat started acting strange. She sat at the door meowing, not her usual sound, but almost questioning. I called her name. She came running, and as I stroked her fur, I whispered, "Who are you talking to, honey?" That's when I heard it. 2 taps, not at the door, not on the floor, but on the wall behind us. Tap, tap, like fingers. Faith loved to mess with the cats when they meowed. She'd mimic their calls, especially Salem and Nebby. We were sitting on the couch one night watching TV. My cat Momo was sprawled on the arm. My cat Mello was on the coffee table. We heard Nebby meowing from the kitchen. Faith meowed back, laughing. But Nebby was on the bookshelf, silent. Her mouth wasn't moving. Still, we heard the meows. "Maybe it's Salem," Faith whispered. I looked. Salem was on my gaming chair across the room, sitting still, staring. We both went pale. Because if it wasn't them, then what was making that noise? Before all this tapping and mimicking started, we'd heard a big dog growl outside the window. A deep, throaty growl. But our dog Chloe and her mate Teddy were in the pen with her sisters. No one else was outside. We even heard what sounded like a low grunt in the hallway later that night. Faith tried to sleep in the bedroom, but the sounds followed her. She told me she heard tapping coming from the bathroom. Not a random tap, not a pipe noise, but multiple, like knuckles, like someone trying to get her attention, like someone inside. She refused to look, too scared she'd see something through the crack of the sliding door that led from our bedroom to the bathroom, and I can't blame her, because I heard it too. Later that night, the same 2 taps, this time from behind my husband's computer, and then again from the kitchen, always just far enough away you couldn't catch it, always just enough to make you look. Every time I turned, I swore I saw my oldest cat, Salem, in the dolly black chair. But when I blinked, nothing was there. Another time, I thought I saw Nebby walking toward me from the kitchen. But she wasn't. She was asleep in the bedroom. It was as if something was copying them, using their shapes, their sounds. And that's when it hit me. The growls, the cries, the tapping, the shadows. They weren't separate. They were one thing. One long, thin, black shape. The one Faith had seen at the window. And it wasn't just outside anymore. It was in. We still don't know what it is. We don't know why it started or what it wants, but we both felt it. That sense you get when you're being watched. That sense you get when you're standing at the edge of something dangerous but can't see it. We felt it pressing in on us. And even now, when the apartment is quiet, sometimes we still hear it. Tap, tap, waiting, bridge to next story. That's the thing about shadows. They don't just follow. Sometimes they become part of your family. Sometimes they use your pets. And sometimes, like in our next story, they don't come alone. They bring history with them. Old pain, old rituals, old curses, and they never leave quietly. They say trauma runs in families, but sometimes it's not just the trauma that gets passed down. Sometimes it's something darker, something summoned, something waiting. This is a story about a family curse, one that may have started with witchcraft, but never stopped growing. It begins with a woman named Kathy. She was my grandmother, but no one would ever call her grandma. She wasn't the kind, gentle type. She wasn't the mothering type either. If anything, she was dangerous. Kathy had 2 daughters. One she loved, and one she despised. The one she despised was my mother, Nancy. Why? Because Nancy was the result of an affair Kathy had while her husband was away on deployment. When he came home and did the math, he realized Nancy wasn't his. He left Kathy with 2 children. One she claimed, and one she blamed. Nancy grew up in abuse. And from that abuse, something else grew too. Darkness. Because Kathy didn't just lash out with words or hands. She also dabbled in witchcraft. She considered herself a white witch, but the things she did weren't white at all. According to my mother, and several others who witnessed it, Kathy once placed her own infant daughter, Nancy, in the center of a ritual circle, a circle marked with strange symbols, red and black candles surrounding her, and Kathy chanting, calling on something. For what? A sacrifice? A vessel? Or just to see what might answer? No one knows, but everyone agreed. That night, something came. Later in life, Kathy suddenly ran out of the house one day. She found 2 Mormon missionaries and demanded to be baptized on the spot. Some say it was guilt, some say it was fear, but Nancy believed it was just another tool. Religion became a weapon for Kathy, just like witchcraft had been. Years passed, and then I was born. From the very start, it felt like my mother, Nancy, was cursed. Abuse followed her. Men tried to break her. Accidents and tragedies haunted her life. It was like bad luck wasn't just a coincidence. It was attached. When my Nana, one of the only kind women in our family, was passed away, I saw her. Not in a dream, but standing there clear as day. She told me she loved me, that she'd always watch over me. The next morning I told my mom, tears in my eyes, that Nana had died. She didn't believe me, not until the phone rang, and the voice on the other end confirmed it, just like I'd already said. By the time I was 7, the curse made itself known again. I was standing on my bed watching the birds scatter outside my window. That's when I heard it. An evil laugh, not childish, not human, but something right beside my ear. And the worst part? There was nothing there, just a wall, an empty room. And me, that laugh, still echoes in my head. When I was finally removed from Nancy's custody, guess who I was sent to live with? Kathy, the very woman who had started it all. And that's when the torment became worse. Objects appeared in my room that weren't mine. I was accused of stealing. The motion alarm on my door would go off at night, which meant punishments, beatings, bruises I couldn't explain, books thrown across the room by unseen hands, lights flickering, whispers. The paranormal activity always matched Kathy's moods. The angrier she became, the stronger it got. Eventually, a kind woman reported Kathy. Child services came. I was placed in foster care, and there, the activity wasn't as violent. There was still something. The spirit of a little boy in the barn. I'd see his handprints on pipes, his face peeking out of windows. I'd wave, and he'd wave back. But it was nothing compared to what Kathy had unleashed. Years passed, and I returned to my mother. But something had changed. She was older now, but more like Kathy than ever. The abuse was subtle, manipulative, harder to prove. And the paranormal? Still there, still waiting. In 2022, I had one of the worst nightmares of my life. I found a small mirror made of twisted branches. Inside, beneath the glass, was a fake eye. But when I looked closer, the eye blinked. It wasn't fake. It was watching me. I dropped it and ran. My stepfather called after me from the hallway. But when I tried to answer, my voice was gone. I collapsed to the floor and woke up. I had already left Mormonism at 15. I'd turned to paganism, the left-hand path. I told myself I could use this curse, make it mine, twist it to my advantage. But that dream proved something. It wasn't gone. It never would be. The bathroom lights began flickering. Objects vanished. Books flew again. And my sister, who had started practicing witchcraft too, noticed it. We both tried to find ways to banish it. But my mother found out. She accused me of trying to turn the family against her. She banned witchcraft completely, and the activity intensified. On January 14th, 2023, I fled. Not because of the poltergeist, but because of the abuse. And the activity stopped. For now, but I can still feel it. That thing Kathy summoned, it followed her. Then it followed Nancy. And now, it follows me. Waiting, watching, and if my siblings ever have daughters, I'm terrified it'll find them too. Because curses don't die, they spread. And mine is still alive. Bridge to next story. That's the truth about families. You inherit more than blood. You inherit secrets. And sometimes, you inherit monsters. But not all monsters stay in the family. Some come from the outside, from the woods, the dark, the strangers who walk too close when they shouldn't. And in our next story, you'll see what I mean. Sometimes horror doesn't start with a scream. Sometimes it starts with silence, with rain, with headlights cutting across an empty lot, and with a figure moving like something out of a nightmare. This is Scary Plug-In, and tonight's story is about a night that was never supposed to be frightening. Just friends meeting up, just a quick smoke. But what we saw that night, I can never explain, and I'll never forget. It was late. The kind of late where a park feels less like a park and more like the stage for something you don't want to see. Rain poured in sheets, hammering the pavement. The soccer fields on either side of the parking lot stretched long and empty. The woods at the far end were nothing but black shadows swaying in the storm. And me. I was parked dead center in the lot, right under the only streetlight. A little island of light in the middle of a drowned world. I sat there waiting for my friends, watching the rain streak down the glass. When they pulled up, I didn't hesitate. I hopped out of my car and into theirs. We laughed, shook the water off, started to drive out of the lot. That's when I saw it. Someone was walking directly toward my car. And at first I thought, okay, maybe it's just some guy cutting through the park. But no, the soccer fields are huge. And this person, they hadn't come from the lot. Not from the path. They'd come from the middle of the field itself. And they were walking across it in a perfect diagonal, like a bishop sliding across a chessboard. Straight line, never wavering, never slowing. Yo, who the hell is that? I muttered. My friends squinted through the rain. None of us recognized the figure. It wasn't a jogger. Not in that weather. It wasn't a lost kid. Not at that hour. And yet, there it was, coming for my car. We stopped at the edge of the lot, watching. I thought I was about to watch someone break into my car. But then, something even stranger happened. The figure didn't stop. They walked right up to the car. And then, without pausing, they turned. They moved along the back of the car, turned again, down the driver's side, turned again. A few steps past the hood, then another turn, back onto that same diagonal line. the exact same angle they'd been walking before, and then they continued, right into the woods, disappearing into the storm. The whole time, their pace never changed. Not fast, not slow, just steady, unnatural in its consistency, like watching a machine, or worse, like watching something that only looked human. The three of us sat frozen. No one spoke until the figure was gone. Finally, I whispered, "What the hell was that?" No answer, just wide eyes and nervous silence. When we could finally breathe again, I told them, "We're not hanging out here. Not anymore. Take me to my car. And let's meet at Walmart instead." They agreed instantly. None of us wanted to stay in that park another second. And here's the part that unsettles me most. The way it walked, like it had somewhere to be. Like it had a target, like it didn't care who saw it. It reminded me of something out of It Follows. That relentless, methodical pursuit. And it left me wondering, was I just unlucky enough to witness something passing through? Or was it passing through me to get to wherever it needed to go? That night, I lay awake replaying it in my head. The rain, the figure, the diagonal walk, and the woods at the far end of the field. I never went back to that park at night again, and I don't think I ever will, because I'm not sure that figure was ever really gone. Bridge to next story. Sometimes you don't know if you've seen a spirit, a monster, or just something that doesn't belong in this world at all. But in our next story, it isn't what someone saw in the rain that will chill you. It's what they brought into their home, and the darkness that decided to stay. Some curses, they don't die with the one who summoned them. They cling. They wait. And if you're unlucky enough, they follow you. This is Scary Plug-in, and tonight's story is about a family curse that began long before I was born. A darkness that has haunted 3 generations. And maybe it isn't finished yet. This story starts with my grandmother. Her name was Kathy, and to put it kindly, she was not Mother of the Year. She had my mom, Nancy, after an affair while her husband was deployed. And when he came home and realized the truth, he left her. Kathy loved one daughter, despised the other. Nancy, my mother, was the one she hated, and from that moment on, darkness rooted itself in our bloodline. When my mom was just a baby, Kathy began to call herself a white witch. But whatever she practiced, it wasn't white. It wasn't light. It was something else. One day, Kathy drew a strange circle on the floor. Symbols, candles, black, red. And she laid Nancy, a baby, right in the center. And she began chanting, summoning, no one knows what. But someone walked in, a friend. They swore they saw it, the baby, the circle, the flames. And from that moment on, whatever Kathy had invited in, it stayed. When Nancy grew older, she carried the scars and the curse. She married men who abused her. She lived in houses where shadows walked. She carried pain like a second skin. And then I was born. From the very start, I knew something was wrong. When I was 7, my Nana passed away. That night she visited me. Her spirit stood there, soft, glowing, telling me she loved me, that she'd watch over me always. I ran to my mother crying, telling her Nana was gone. She didn't believe me, not until the phone rang, not until the news confirmed what I had already been told. But not every presence in my life was kind. One day when I was in my basement room, I leaned against the window watching birds. Out of nowhere, they scattered, like something invisible had startled them. And then I heard it, right by my ear, a laugh. Not a human laugh, not a child's giggle, but a twisted, evil cackle that made my stomach drop. The wall was on my left. The room was empty, and I was alone. That sound still haunts me. I believe it was the same thing Kathy summoned years before. When I was placed in Kathy's custody later, things got worse. Objects moved. Books flew at me. Bruises appeared without explanation. The alarm on my door would go off at night even when I was sleeping, triggering punishments. The haunting seemed to rise and fall with Kathy's mood, like the curse itself was feeding off her darkness. When I escaped her, things calmed, but never stopped. In foster care, I saw the spirit of a boy in the barn. He left handprints on pipes, peeked out of windows, but he was nothing like what followed me from Kathy. He was harmless, even curious, almost a relief compared to the heaviness that clung to me. When I was older, I had one of the worst nightmares of my life. In it, I found a mirror, but it wasn't glass. It was made of twisted branches, and in the reflection was a single eye, a demonic eye staring back at me. When I dropped it, my voice was gone, my strength drained. I collapsed and woke up gasping. From that point on, things in the house grew violent. Lights flickering, objects vanishing, books flying across the room again. And my mother, Nancy, began to change. The older she got, the more she resembled Kathy. The same cruelty, the same twisted words, the same darkness in her eyes. And one day she confessed something. Her biggest fear, she said, was that she'd accidentally create a poltergeist. That same day, another book slammed into me, and I knew it wasn't just fear she already had. In 2023, I left, not because of the entity, not even because of the curse, but because of the abuse. The day I walked away, the activity slowed, but it never ended, because I still feel it. That thing Kathy summoned decades ago. It never left. It lingers, waiting for me, for my siblings, for their children someday. The laugh I heard at 7 years old wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And I fear that this curse, this presence, will outlive all of us. Bridge to final story. Sometimes the horror you face isn't just in your house, or even in your bloodline. Sometimes it waits in the world outside, in the rain, in the woods, in places we walk every day, never knowing what's already watching. And that's where our final story takes us. Some encounters are so strange, so unnatural, that you never forget the way they made your stomach twist. This one still makes my skin crawl. And I swear to you, I wasn't drunk, I wasn't high, and I wasn't dreaming. It happened on a rainy night, and it's the reason I'll never look at an empty soccer field the same way again. It was late, heavy rain falling in sheets, and I was waiting for my friends to pick me up at a park. The parking lot was long, narrow. A single streetlight stood in the very center, and that's where I parked. On either side of the lot stretched soccer fields, wide open, empty. At the very end of the lot, a wall of trees. The forest, thick, dark, swallowing up the night. I waited in my car, engine off, listening to the rain hammer against the roof. Then headlights. My friends pulled in. I hopped out of my car and into theirs, just happy to be out of the storm. But as we started to leave, I saw him, a person, walking, but not from the road, not from the woods. He was cutting straight across one of the soccer fields, and not just wandering. He was moving in a perfect diagonal, like a bishop gliding across a chessboard, his path precise and unwavering. He never looked up, never looked around, just walked right towards my car. I told my friend to stop. We sat there watching, the rain slamming down harder and harder. The man reached the edge of the field and kept going, straight for my car. He didn't hesitate, didn't slow down. One more step, and he would have walked straight into the driver's side. But instead, he turned. He walked the length of the car, step by steady step, turned again, walked along the back, turned once more, along the passenger side. Every angle, every movement, perfect, deliberate, methodical. like he was tracing the outline of my car, like he was inspecting it. Finally, he circled to the front, took a few more steps, and then, without pause, turned back onto that exact same diagonal line, the same angle he'd first come from, and he followed it, all the way across the second soccer field, until he vanished into the forest. The strangest thing wasn't just what he did, it was how he did it. His pace never changed. Not slow, not fast, just steady, like something on a mission, like something programmed, like something that wasn't human at all. In the car, my friends and I sat frozen. No one said a word at first. The only sound was the wipers thumping against the windshield. Then finally I whispered, "That wasn't normal." My friend shook his head. "It was like it follows," he muttered. "That's exactly what it felt like we'd accidentally glimpsed a predator on its way to someone else. And maybe, just maybe, we weren't supposed to see it." We didn't stick around to find out. We drove to Walmart instead, all of us refusing to park near the woods again. But even now, years later, I can still see him in my mind. That steady walk, that diagonal path, that sense of something unnatural, like a monster caught in the act of hunting. And I can't help but wonder, who was his target that night? And did he ever reach them? And that, my friends, was our 13th story. 13 tales of shadows, curses, figures in the dark, and things that follow you long after you've left them behind. Which one chilled you the most? Which one will you remember the next time you're alone in the dark? Because horror isn't always about blood and monsters. Sometimes it's about the things you can't explain, the things you glimpse only for a moment, the things that make you wonder, was it real? Or was it something far worse? You've been listening to Scary Plugin, and remember, the scariest stories are the ones that don't end when the video does.